Shalom Aleichem. Mishnah Yomi continues in our third day of learning Masechet Kidushin. We're in chapter 1, Mishnah Dalet. We've been on the subject of kinyanim, legal transactions that affect a merger between two people, or that one person owns the rights to the labor of another person. Now, what about more common transactions, such as Mishnah Dalet, behema gosa, a large animal? You know, your cows, horses, elephants, niknit b'misira. The transaction, the legally effective change of ownership, is through misira. Misira is handing over the reins or the leash from the previous owner to the new owner. Vehadaka, and a small animal like your sheep and your goats. Behagba, through lifting them up. Divrei Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Eliezer. This is according to the position of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Eliezer. And actually in the Mishnah, they go into, there's an assortment of different kinyanim for livestock and other movable items that work in different ways. Hagba, lifting, works anywhere, even in someone else's property. If someone says, hey, I'm giving you my wristwatch, go and take it, and you pick it up, even though you're in his living room, you now own the wristwatch. And certain other kinyanim, they wouldn't work in someone else's property, like Meshicha, and we'll see. So their position, Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Eliezer, is ideally you would do Hagba, but because big animals are literally quite big, you could do Mesira, handing over the reins. Even though it's a less powerful kinyan, it doesn't work in all locations. But since it's very hard to pick up an elephant, that's what you should do. Now, it is interesting in the Gemara, and this is on Daf Chaf Vav, page 26a, in the Gemara in Kidushin, Rashi, the Gemara actually brings an opinion, yeah, you could theoretically lift up a peel with chavile zmurot, with big bundles of vines. And the Rashi says, well, you get the elephant to come step on the vines, and then you've lifted it up effectively from the ground. The Tosfos, the top Tosfos, is very important for anyone training elephants. He says you could actually, because the elephants try to eat the vines, you could suspend it up in the air and the elephant will lift itself up on its hind legs to go after the vine. So if you're training elephants, it's a very important Tosfos to know in Kidushin, page 26. And back in the Mishnah, small animals, you can use meshicha. That's pulling them. You would take the leash and you'd pull it a little bit and it comes to you, or you push on it. Basically, you make it move. The Bartner brings from the Gemara that Meshicha works both on large and small animals, and Kol Shekan Hagba. As we mentioned, Hagba works on anything in any location. Whereas Meshicha, the pulling, it works in sort of semi-public areas that aren't owned by either the buyer or the seller, like the sides of the Rishus Harabim, like the sidewalk. On to Mishnah Hey, Nechosim, properties, sheyesh lehem achrayut, that have responsibility. Now, we've seen this term before. If somebody owed money, Reuven borrowed money, and then Reuven sold his field. Well, his field was on the hook, had responsibility to pay back his debt. So if Reuven has no money, no other fields, then technically the lender could go after that sold field to collect the debt. So they have responsibility. And we're talking about real estate, land, things that you can't hide, and that's why people can go after that if the debt's not paid. So how are they kone? What's the legal transaction? Niknin bekesef, through exchange of money. Bishtar, through a legal document. Now, a shtar alone only works by a gift. If it's a sale, it needs the shtar and the exchange of money. Uba chazaka. Chazaka is, we've mentioned, a sign of ownership. So the seller says, hey, here it's yours, take the key, and the new owner goes and unlocks the door and locks it behind him. It's a sign of ownership, where he starts plowing in the field. Now, the Mishnah contrasts, Vishe'ein lehem achrayut, property that does not have responsibility, movable property, aka metaltalin, ein niknin ela b'meshicha. You can only use meshicha. Now, the Gemara explains, you could also use hagba. We use meshicha as the shorthand for a physical act, pulling it towards the new owner. Now, chasim she'ein lehem achrayut, and another thing about movable property, niknin im nechasim sheyesh lehem achrayut. They can be purchased or acquired, legally transacted, along with land. So if you had land with a bunch of bales of hay on top of the land, it would work bekesev, bishtar, v'chazaka. When they do one of these three methods to acquire the land itself, and he says, hey, you know what, you get the hay on the land as well, then that comes along with it without the need for a separate kinyan. V'zokikin et nechosim sheyesh lehem achrayut l'shava alehem, and they roll up property that does have responsibility to cause the other party to make an oath upon them. So what's going on here is there was a lawsuit, And in this lawsuit, there were 100 barrels of wine, that's movable, metaltalin, and there's also a vineyard. And, maybe there was a sale, a transaction, a rental, something fell through, and there's a lawsuit. And the defendant has to make an oath that he does not owe him the barrels of wine and the land. And now, normally, we never make a shvuah on the land. The Gemara learns out why we don't make a shvuah on real estate, on karka. However, since the lawsuit also involves these movable barrels of wine, since he has to make a shavua on that, we're megalgel, a gilgul shvua, roll in also an oath that he doesn't owe the land. So we see an interesting two-way relationship where the kinyan, the acquisition of land, of real estate, can work for other items, movable items on the land, and also an oath in a lawsuit about the movable items can involve an oath on land as well. Yashar kochachem, tiskulim mitzvot.